Hello and welcome back to the Frogs of War podcast. I'm Anthony North. That's Russ Hodges. We're going to talk all things TCU sports. We had another big weekend of baseball as TCU took the series from Oklahoma State. We've got some transfer news in the basketball world, spring game football coming up, and everything else. Russ, how are you doing tonight?
Feeling good, man. I'm excited to start packing here. I'm going to be heading down to Texas tomorrow night for a bachelor party, so hopefully make it back to the Chicagoland area in one piece. Can't make any promises about that, but um, ready to sit down here and talk about a really good weekend for TCU baseball and another really solid weekend all around for TCU athletics.
Yeah, next week if you come on here and you've got a face tattoo and one of your eyebrows shaved off or something, that means it was a good bachelor party
Uh,
weekend.
Gotta gonna have
Well, you got to come see us on YouTube, see next week how he's
and
looking.
I'm excited. I haven't been to Austin. As a TCU student, I
Oh,
was out of
really?
state and I didn't have a car. I always flew back and forth from Chicago to DFW. So I pretty much stuck around the Metroplex and I still have quite a few buddies that live around that area. But no, haven't been to Austin, Houston. I'm kind of a virgin when it comes to the other parts of Texas. So excited to get all the fun experiences in this weekend for sure.
Yeah, I had not been to Austin really ever until we did like a fall break one of the years at TCU and did an Austin and San Antonio trip. And yeah, I don't remember much of that one, but it was a fun time. um, anyway, how did the baseball go for the weekend? TCU takes the series from Oklahoma State, a huge home series in Lupton, coming off the series loss last week in Lubbock. Um, Russ, how did we get there?
Well, this was a huge series coming in. Oklahoma State being the number 16 team in the country, one of the top teams in the Big 12. And for the Frogs, after that loss to Texas Tech, losing two out of three, you thought that this was a must-win series if TCU had any hopes of still winning the Big 12 championship. And getting started on Thursday, the Frogs nearly rallied back and won that one. Chase Hoover actually got the start, so the Frogs made a pitching change to the weekend rotation. Ryan Vanderhey was replaced by Chase Hoover. Cole Klecker pitched on Friday, and Cam Brown took the ball on Saturday. But Chase Hoover, he showed some good things. He struck out six guys, gave up some hard contact. Oklahoma State was really showing the power early in that game. They hit multiple home runs and took a 7-3 lead. Chase Hoover only lasted 4 innings, gave up 7 runs, but Frogs didn't really back down. Cole Fontenelle hit another home run in this game, and TCU scored three unanswered runs, nearly rallied back, but just came up 1 run short, losing that first game on Thursday 7-6. But the rest of the series was all Frogs. Cole Klecker came out on Friday, threw another awesome outing, had 7 innings pitched, only gave up 2 runs. Like we've talked about before, he's consistently going deep into games for TCU and has, in my opinion, at least made the undoubtable claim that he's the number one pitcher on the team right now. I think he's been the most consistent. He's gone deep into games and just done a tremendous job. So Ben Abeld came in, the left-hander freshman. We talked about him last weekend after that disastrous late inning against Texas Tech. Threw two shutout frames in this game to help preserve the win and has looked really good over his last couple of outings after that series against the Red Raiders. So TCU winning the Friday game 7-3. Anthony Silva hit two more home runs in this game, and he just had an awesome series all the way around. I mean, he was flashing the glove at shortstop, making some fantastic defensive plays all weekend long. He's moving up in the batting order. He's not really being protected like he was at the start of the season. He's been hitting out of the six hole and showing some power. Again, we talked about his surprising power last weekend, and his average right now is up to 387 on the season. So for him to be nearly touching 400 and making the kinds of defensive plays that he's been making in the field, it's been frankly kind of a godsend for TCU. And the defense as a whole in this series was significantly improved from what we saw last weekend against Texas Tech. And again, I don't want to make the excuse about the Red Raiders playing on a turf field, but maybe the Frogs felt a little more comfortable at Lupton Stadium, and the Frogs were much better defensively in this series, so that was a huge plus. Saturday was the rubber matchup. Cam Brown took the ball and for the second consecutive outing really struggled, only lasted 3 innings, walked 4 guys, and this is back-to-back outings for him where he struggled to get out of the fourth inning. But the bullpen really came through for TCU, and it really came through all weekend long. I mentioned Ben Abel helped close out the win Friday. Ryan Vanderhey, along with River Ridings and Hunter Hodges, who's been hurt for most of the season, he actually made his debut on Thursday. Only got one out. He got the last out of the game for TCU, but those three pitchers combined to throw 5 innings of shutout relief. And then Saturday, you had Sam Stottenborough and Garrett Wright just completely slammed the door on the Cowboys. Sam Stottenborough threw 3 2/3, no hits allowed, struck out 4 batters, and then Garrett Wright came in and is just continuing to look like the Garrett Wright of old. Had 2 1/3, 4 strikeouts for him. So 6 innings of no hit, scoreless baseball from those two veteran pitchers. And Stottenborough, he's a veteran pitcher, a lot of experience, came over from Cal before the season started. We've talked about him a few times and pushed his ERA down below 3 after this outing on Saturday. And I think he's making the argument that he might be worthy of a weekend look in the starting rotation. I think he's been really consistent out of the bullpen as a long reliever. He has 25 strikeouts and only 8 walks on the season. And with Cam Brown and Ryan Vanderhey when they were starting, the walks were a big issue. Can't be giving up free passes to guys in the Big 12, and that hasn't really been the case for Stottenborough. So maybe he gets a look at some point during the series coming up against UNC Wilmington. But TCU offensively in this game had 7 runs in the 8th inning, and that really clinched it for the Frogs. Trey Richardson hit a 2-run double. Braden Taylor added an RBI double, and the Frogs took advantage of some pass balls and some defensive mistakes by the Cowboys. So TCU winning the Saturday game 12-5 and clinching a series win. And it's a huge series, especially when you consider that the top of the Big 12 standings are starting to get a little crowded, and TCU is now 7-5 in the conference. They've played some tough teams already. Texas Tech, obviously Oklahoma State. You have Texas coming up still, but West Virginia and Baylor and Kansas State, all those teams are down. And so you really have an opportunity here now over these next 3 weeks or so to really generate some positive momentum and make a kind of a last ditch push here for the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, I think after last weekend, we were worried about how far could TCU fall down in the standings, and as it turns out, they turn it right back around and get this series win and are now sitting tied with Oklahoma State in for the lead in the win column in the conference wins. So uh, absolutely massive for them to come out like that, and that the Texas series is going to be something. I mean, that's still a couple weeks away, and there's plenty of baseball between then. But I expect Lupton to be absolutely rocking when the Longhorns come to town with potentially with a Big 12 title opportunity on the line between the two there. So um, this weekend series, though, I think um, one of the takeaways here, big picture, is you mentioned the defense and the pitching, but to hold this Oklahoma State team to just 14 runs across this series after giving up more than that in the games against Texas Tech each, right? So I think that Oklahoma State is the top slugging team in the conference, one of the top offenses in the country, and to be able to hold them down like this and outscore them 26-14 really is a huge sign, a huge turn. And the other thing we talked about last week was uh, worrying about, okay, that terrible inning against Texas Tech, is the bullpen going to be able to recover? Will Benabeld be able to shake off such an outing, being left out there to dry? And um, him in particular, and we'll talk about the ACU game, I guess, coming up. But since that inning, including 2 innings against Oklahoma State, he has pitched, let's see, 4.2 innings and has given up 0 runs, just 2 hits, and 8 strikeouts.
Mhm.
So I would say he's definitely bounced back and has that bad night in Lubbock isn't going to totally ruin him and his time as a Horned Frog. So I think we maybe didn't need to be so dramatic there. So it's just one of those things. It's like, it's good to see that this defense and this pitching staff could step back in here against a extremely high powered offense. And they certainly took some punches, took some home runs, took some extra base hits, but were able to. TCU's offense was able to match that every step of the way.
And we've talked a lot about the young pitchers on this team, specifically the freshman guys like Luis Rodriguez and Ben Abeld and Cohen Feezer, who's a sophomore, and how these young pitchers have really had to step up and pitch a lot because the production from the veteran guys had been sort of lacking due to injuries and frankly underperformance. But Garrett Wright is looking like the Garrett Wright of old, and Hunter Hodges, I think, is actually going to be a really important piece of this bullpen. He also pitched in the game against Abilene Christian yesterday, threw a shutout frame there, and he's another guy with really good uh, late inning stuff. He was a closer at Wilmington and is a strikeout machine when he's on target. So to get him back is a huge boost for the bullpen. And now that you have Ryan Vanderhey also throwing out of the bullpen, Sam Staudenborough has looked really good. And we haven't even talked about Luke Savage, who hasn't pitched over the last couple of weeks with an injury, and you hope that he can get back and round into form as well, so that you're not really having to lean so much on those young guys who admittedly have pitched. I think they've punched above their belt throughout most of the season, but we also felt at some point that they would start to take some of their lumps here and there. So really happy to see some of the veteran guys who have dealt with some injuries and some early season struggles really turn things around, and looks like TCU is starting to find a little bit of that balance in terms of the young guys and the veterans who are pitching out of the starting rotation right now and in the bullpen. And if they can continue to get the kind of relief that they got over the weekend against Oklahoma State, Frogs are going to be a tough team to beat over the rest of the season.
Yep, and went into that midweek game at Abilene Christian. I think we've seen TCU. I think it was last season, went there and maybe had a loss. TCU's had some struggles in the midweek. I think it's hard sometimes to gauge, you know, the old we're playing their Super Bowl kind of situation. But this game against Abilene Christian was kind of it was just a weird one, I guess. I think started off, it kept seeming like TCU should be scoring more runs in this game. And early in the game, Braden Taylor had what appeared to be a home run kind of die on the warning track. And then Cole Fontenelle, the next time up right after that, has a home run robbed from him. And then Trey Richardson's picked off, doesn't tag. What would have been like 4 runs there, turns into luckily just one run. But TCU escapes there with the 7-5 win, and it's always good to come away with a win in that midweek, and especially here in, I guess, what you would kind of say is an off week in the Big 12 schedule, with UNC Wilmington coming here to Fort Worth this weekend for a series, as TCU gets a little bit of a reprieve in its very difficult Big 12 schedule.
Yeah, this is another game that the bullpen really stepped up. Braden Sloan took the ball to start the game. He's been the midweek starter all season. Had an kind of outing. It was rather short. He threw four and a third, gave up 6 hits, 3 earned runs. Wasn't really anything special from him, but the bullpen, River Ridings came in, and River Ridings is another guy that is a part of that veteran mix of pitchers who has played at a high level in this conference before, has struggled over the last year or so with his command, but has looked pretty good over his last few outings. River Ridings, along with Hunter Hodges, who threw a scoreless eighth inning, and Ben Abeld, who threw a scoreless ninth inning, actually earned the save in this game for his first career save. Hunter Hodges and Ben Abeld struck out four guys over the last 2 innings and didn't allow a run, really shut it down there at the end of the game. And again, Anthony Silva, 3 for 3 in this game. As I mentioned, his batting average is approaching 400 on the season. Luke Boyers went 2 for 4, hit a home run out of the leadoff hole. And midway through this game, Abilene Christian was just frankly giving the game away with all the walks they were allowing on the mound. And TCU was able to take a 6-1 lead, large in part to all of the walks that were allowed. So good plate discipline by the Frog offense. We've seen multiple different players this year be able to work a count and draw a walk, get on base by any means necessary, and then the aggressiveness on the base paths. I think TCU is up to over 70 stolen bases as a team this year through just over 30 games. So anytime you can get guys with high OBP numbers on base that are also capable of stealing bases, your offense is going to do quite a bit of damage. So happy to see TCU get this win. You know, the midweek losses are always more annoying, I think, than anything, because these are always against teams that you should beat. But um, again, really encouraged by the bullpen, and hopefully guys like River Ridings and Hunter Hodges, who I think are going to be really integral pieces of the back end of the bullpen, can continue to come alive here as the season moves forward.
And yeah, so if you're coming out to check out UNC Wilmington, I don't know that we have a whole lot of scouting reports or anything on UNC Wilmington, you and I, but they did, they're a pretty consistent program in college baseball, and they've had an okay season, 19-12 overall on the season. Gave Wake Forest a really tough game, beat East Carolina twice this season. So not anything to sneeze at here, but certainly a series that TCU should control.
And Hunter Hodges, as a former UNC Wilmington pitcher, I believe he was their closer last year and was their ninth inning guy to lock down the saves. Maybe he gets an opportunity to secure a save against his old team. I think we'd enjoy seeing that.
Bring a little bit that back to them. All right. Anything else on the baseball?
I think we're pretty much solid there. Let's get into some basketball stuff here.
All right. So the basketball stuff has been heating up. The transfer portal for Jamie Dixon and the Frogs has been they've been putting in work for sure. So 2 more big additions this week, after adding Jameer Nelson last week. So the first one is Coastal Carolina big man SM Mustafa, and the double machine really looks to step right into just the thing that we've been talking about. This roster will need a big man that can grab rebounds and can put the ball in the basket. Averaging over 12 points and 10 rebounds a game this season, and he's longtime starter, and I think should be able to step right in and kind of tag team, excuse me, with Xavier Cork right away to give that lineup a real boost down low that it needs.
And I have to give a quick little shout out here. Issam Mostafa from Cairo, Egypt, is going to be the second Egyptian player, I believe, to play for Jamie Dixon at TCU after Ahmed Hamdi. If you remember Hamdi, he was a role player, big man. I think he came off the bench a few years ago, and I remember being at a TCU home game. Gosh, this was probably 5 or 6 years ago, and the man was just going off. So I just every time he scored, I would just yell Hamdi.
Hamdi.
And now we got
Oh yeah.
Mustafa coming in, and I watched his highlights because I was curious to see how he'd play, and he's a big guy. He's only 6'9", but he's 250 pounds, 12 points and 10 rebounds, like you said. He was a 3-year player for Coastal Carolina. His numbers were really consistent over those 3 seasons. He's been really a 12 and 9, 12 and 10 guy throughout his entire career. Shoots over 50% from the field, and from watching his highlights, he's a skilled big man. He's primarily a low post player, and he's a willing passer. I saw some plays where he had guys cutting to the rim, and he made some really nice backdoor passes to the guards to put some layups home. So, a skilled player is a willing passer. I'm not sure how much of a defender he's going to be, average less than a steal and less than a block per game, but I did see some good defensive plays in his highlight package. So, an experienced player, and like you mentioned, a needed position at center, which is what he played at Coastal Carolina. Um, a guy who I think is going to come in and challenge Xavier Cork for that starting center position next year, and I think has the experience and the skills, particularly on the offensive side, necessary to come in and be a impact starter right away.
Yeah, one thing that's a good sign to see is when the news comes out, and online Coastal Carolina fans are like really mad that he's gone for real and that he's really not coming back. Um, yeah, I think they were. Uh, he was a fan favorite and was a really strong player for them, and they were hoping to potentially have him return to the Chanticleers there, but he comes over to the Horned Frogs. I know there's always, because of baseball, we all, anytime we hear the Coastal Carolina, we kind of shudder a little bit. They took that national championship from TCU in baseball, but I guess a little we'll take Mustafa back as a little bit of penance. Um, the other big addition is a guard, a scoring guard, a sharpshooter filling another role that TCU missed off of this roster and will certainly need going forward. Is Trey Tennyson from Texas A&M Corpus Christi, a team that made it into the play-in game of the NCAA tournament this year, and he was kind of the star in that game and had been probably the star of that team throughout this season, shooting over 40% from three, shooting over 85% from the free throw line, both places where TCU ranked amongst the worst sub 300 in the country at both of those statistics. So a huge addition to this roster, and again likely steps into a big role right away for the Horned Frogs next season. Maybe he's the starter if Damian Ball doesn't come back, or depending on how this roster shakes out, maybe he's kind of that Chuck O'Bannon role off the bench. But another big addition for Jamie Dixon and the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, I see Tennyson playing a two-guard role for this team, and to average almost 16 points per game, shoot over 40% from three is nothing to slouch at. He was the single season three-point record holder for the Islanders as well. And he's another experienced player. He played 2 seasons at Corpus Christi. Prior to that, he played 1 year of JUCO and 1 year at Central Connecticut State, which I'm guessing might be a Division II school. But regardless, he's played 4 years of college basketball, and 2 years with a Division I program. So he's going to be coming in as a fifth year college player. Mustafa's going to be coming in as a fourth year college player. So these aren't guys that Coach Dixon is expected to be grooming over the next year or so, like Jace Posey or Isaiah Manning, the two freshmen come in. And these are guys that are going to come in and make an impact right away. And uh, I see Tennyson being kind of the sixth man at this point, being the lead scorer off the bench. Maybe can emulate a little Sir Jabari Rice for Texas, who was the sixth man for them this year, but averaged, well into double figures in scoring. A bigger guard at 6'4", and just a really solid transfer class coming together now for TCU. It's very early, of course. Portal combat is still well underway in college basketball, but to get a top five rated transfer in Jameer Nelson, who's a 20 plus point per game scorer, and pair that with a double double center in Mustafa and a roughly 16 point per game scorer in Tennyson. This roster, this is looking more like a retool and not like a rebuild. And you're going to have some important role players coming back like Jacoby Coles and Micah Peavy and others. We're still waiting to hear about Emmanuel Miller and of course Damian Baugh, but um, it's a really good looking group right now, and there's still so much time before we even get into, practice and whatnot for the upcoming season. So really interested to see how things continue to unfold. I want to say the Frogs are still in the mix for Primo Spears, the Georgetown transfer who had, I believe, Kansas, Arkansas, TCU, and one other school in his top four. It's gotten pretty quiet since then, though, so maybe we'll be hearing something pretty soon. But really excited about these two players, and I think both of these guys are going to come in and make an immediate impact for TCU.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I mean, it's already it's so far away, even just like to football season, that it's hard to think all the way ahead to basketball season. But I'm pretty excited already for next year's squad. See how it shakes out. I guess speaking of football season, we can move on there to spring game coming up Friday night in the Carter. They've got deals on food and beer. Everybody get out there and take in some Horned Frog football here in the spring in the stadium. I did see it will be broadcast on ESPN Plus. So if you're not in Fort Worth, you're still able to catch the events of the day. I'm not totally sure how much of a game. I don't think they're really intending to play like any kind of football game, but there will be some scrimmage aspects to it. But I think much of the news coming out has been that they intend to do some situational type drills, some setups there like that. So, but um, with spring practice coming to a close here, what are the big things that you're kind of hoping to see out of TCU football, or what is there to watch for in this spring game?
I think most eyes are going to be on Chandler Morris. We've talked about him being the clear front runner for the starting quarterback position this coming season. Steven Johnson, who does an awesome job with the Star Telegram, is reported on Josh Hoover as well as the number two quarterback, and how he's made some significant strides during spring ball, according to Sonny Dykes. But right now, this is going to be a Chandler Morris led offense, and he's we've talked about it so many times. He's shown the talent to be a big time player, and the biggest question is just going to be if he can stay healthy. And I believe a quote that he gave Steven Johnson earlier today was that he's looking to perhaps bulk up a little bit before the start of this coming season, maybe put on like 5 pounds or so. It's going to be really important that he stays healthy. Offensively, some guys that are making an impact right away. Willis Patrick, the transfer in from Jackson State, who was a big time right tackle for Deion Sanders and was a D2 All-American. He seems to be a plug and play player on the offensive line. He's filling one of the guard positions right now and has done a really nice job there. Wide receivers, you have wide receivers galore in this offense, whether it's JoJo
Love
Earl
it.
or John Paul Richardson. Jordan Hudson is running with the first team offense right now. Savion Williams is probably going to be stepping into that X slot position that Quentin Johnston played last year. So Savion Williams could be the featured wide receiver for the Frogs. You have DeAndre Rogers, who's a former four-star recruit, making some noise at the tight end and the Y slot position, which is kind of that hybrid wide receiver tight end role that Jaquarius Spivey played last year. Obviously, he's no longer with the team. He's back at Mississippi State. You're going to have another veteran offensive line this year. John Lands has reportedly moved to center. He's a guy that's played quite a bit at the guard position and has some good size too at 6'4", 320 pounds. And just looking at the offensive line and what it could potentially look like, if Brandon Coleman winds up moving to left guard and you play someone like Marcus Williams at left tackle who's 6'7", 330 pounds. You got Coleman at 6'6", 325 pounds at left guard. Willis Patrick, all 6'4", 347 pounds of him at right guard. And then Andrew Coker, who's going to be a redshirt senior at 6'7", 315 pounds. So this is going to be a potentially another big, beefy offensive line like it was last year. So I think that should bode pretty well for Chandler Morris and keeping him healthy. On the defensive side, Steven Johnson wrote a nice piece about Jonathan Bax, who's one of the freshmen coming in and has actually gotten some run with the first team defense due to a couple injuries. I guess Jamoy Hodge is recovering from an injury, as well as Marcel Brooks, who is back on the team. I was curious to see if he would use a COVID year or not. He missed, I want to say, pretty much all of last season with an injury and had an injury as well during fall camp. And it's been a kind of a tough road for him, as talented of a player as he is. He's just had some horrible luck with injury. So you hope that he can stay healthy. The depth at linebacker looks really, really nice with Shadrack Banks coming back, Johnny Hodges, Jonathan Bax, the freshman, stepping in, and then Nnamdi Obiezer, who was a defensive back last year, has changed positions and he's playing linebacker now as well. So a lot more depth at that position. Cornerback is going to be an absolute battle. You have Josh Newton coming back, but you also have a slew of guys like Avery Helm, the transfer from Florida, Channing Canada, who's the number one JUCO recruit in the country. You've got Keontae Jenkins, who's a former four-star guy, Kyron Chambers, who was a big-time corner from the state of Texas. A lot of guys are going to be vying for playing time at the corner position, and then you have Nook Bradford coming back in the secondary along with Bud Clark and Abe Kamara and Mark Perry. So the back eight for TCU is going to have, I think, more depth and more talent than last season when you consider some of the young safeties like Chase Biddle and Jamel Johnson and Randon Fontenette and Javion Wilcox, who are all four-star guys. On the defensive line, um, some interesting things there. Garrett Hayes has actually changed positions from offensive line to defensive line, which is I thought he might be in the running maybe for a starting spot on the offensive line, but has quite a bit of size at 6'5", 320 pounds. You also have Marcus Deal coming in, who is a big time four-star recruit, Avion Carter, another four-star guy, as well as your returning players like Dominic Williams and Timon Mitchell. So the defensive line, I think, is going to have more size than it did last year. I think you're going to have uh, about as much experience, and you have some really talented young players coming in who may have a chance to play right away. So things right now are looking pretty promising for TCU. As far as I've seen, the spring practices, there haven't been too many serious injuries. I believe I may have read somewhere on, maybe it was on Horned Frog Blitz forums, that Cordell Russell broke his collarbone and has been out for for the spring, but um, TCU has wide receivers galore right now, and still some guys that aren't even on campus yet that could potentially be playing this coming season. So he'll have time to rest up and get right for the fall, and it's going to be here before we know it. First week of the season against Colorado, Eddie Lampkin posted his Colorado announcement officially on Twitter. You know he's probably going to be rolling through Fort Worth to try and get some revenge on his old school. But no, I think it's going to be a great season. It's going to be a good spring game, and I don't know if there's portal combat for football like there is for basketball. I don't know if it'll officially be called portal combat, but the portal is going to open again after spring camp as well at some point. So we'll probably see some movement with the roster and maybe some new additions as well.
Yeah, I think, man, looking at this roster and hearing you talk through it and just thinking through the potential here, I'm already really excited about this team. I mean, you don't have the known star power of someone like Quentin Johnston or Travius Hodges Tomlinson or D Winters, but uh, I think there's a lot. Just a lot to be excited about on this team. It's deeper, I think, than last year's team at positions that have not really traditionally been deep for TCU. I think the offensive line. You didn't even mention really the two deep on the offensive line has a chance to all be strong rotation players, and I don't know that we've really had that maybe ever for TCU, where you have um, that kind of confidence in both levels of the offensive line, the linebacker spot. I I was really excited to see the reporting on Jonathan Bax. I think he was very clearly under recruited. Watching all of his stuff as a recruit, and that he never like kept climbing up the stars rankings. It didn't really make sense because he was a pretty scary guy on film, and it felt like, man, this guy's going to be a terror on the football field. Um, he's got edge pass rush capability and D Winters linebacker instinct. So I think he's going to be a star for the Frogs, and excited to see that that's kind of already starting to take place here. Um, a lot of good depth in the secondary. I think that maybe the one thing to really kind of see how this is going to shake out in two spots that I'm uncertain on. One is, where does the pass rush come from? Maybe it is the Jonathan Bax linebacker type situation, but losing Dylan Horton, I don't know that Timon Mitchell or Caleb Fox are that kind of rush ends in this defense, and maybe that's not really the style of defense that TCU needs to run going forward. But Horton was such a big piece of what TCU was able to do defensively last season, and that's one that we'll see how that production is replaced. The other is, how is the running back room going to sort itself out? I'm sure that this will be a three-headed monster, as was on the depth chart every game last season, but obviously Kendre Miller was the lead back. But will it be the Alabama transfer, former five-star Trey Sanders? Will it be Amani Bailey, who showed some great flashes last season? Trent Battle showed flashes, really good out of the backfield, on pass plays out of the backfield as well. So I think that's those are two other spots that I think maybe you didn't touch on exactly, that I'm pretty intrigued to see how it shakes out going forward, and what we'll get to see of that in the spring game on Friday.
I really like Amani Bailey. I watched him last season, and he was unfortunately kind of buried on the depth chart behind Kendre Miller and Amari DiMercato, but it felt like every time he touched the ball, you felt like he was going to break off some kind of a long run. He just showed really great burst, and I want to say he finished the season with perhaps over 8 yards a carry. It was something really high and just didn't get a large volume of work. And if I had to guess what the depth chart is going to look like, I would say it's going to be something similar to what we saw last year. And seeing the word "or" on the depth
A
chart
lot of oars
quite a bit,
on,
I
yeah.
would say that I feel like Amani Bailey is probably your 1A, with Trey Sanders being your 1B, and Trent Battle will probably get sprinkled in a little bit. I thought he made some nice plays last season, really limited work, made some nice blocks and plays out of the backfield. So offensively, I think the two players to keep an eye on. The first one is JoJo Earl, who I think is going to be a huge impact guy out of the slot. And then also John Paul Richardson from Oklahoma State is a really experienced player and was one of the better receivers on that team last season. They just had no one to throw him the ball because it was like a quarterback carousel every week with all the injuries and uh, tanking that was going on over in Stillwater. But I think John Paul Richardson is someone who's going to come in and potentially go for 500 to 600 yards, maybe more next season. You mentioned that you don't have the Quentin Johnston kind of player. You don't have the Kenray Miller. You don't even have the Max Duggan for that matter. But I feel like, as you said, the depth is just so much greater than it was last season. And I realistically think that you could have 4 or 5 different receivers in a game, whether it's Jordan Hudson or JoJo Earl or John Paul Richardson or Savion Williams. We haven't even talked about Jack Beck, the transfer from LSU that's going to be coming in. You have young guys also like Major Everhart and Cordell Russell when he gets healthy. So you could have 4 or 5 guys at any point who have the potential to go off in a game. Not to mention you have Jared Wiley, all reliable, coming back at the tight end position, so that gives you a really good red zone threat. A young player like DeAndre Rogers, who's been kind of waiting his turn, hasn't really played a whole lot, but he's been kind of buried on the depth chart as well from having to play behind guys like Spivey and Wiley and in the past some other players as well. So lots to like for sure about
I,
the depth and the
yeah,
talent all
I,
the way around.
I think lots of opportunity for some creativity on offense. I think Kendall Briles will be able to go into his bag and come out with just some nonsense that is going to work because the talent is just so great on this team that that he'll have to play with. So hopefully, Chandler Morris can stay healthy and can run this offense in the way that is successful. But yeah, a lot to like, and uh, hopefully everyone listening is super excited about TCU football already, and hopefully we'll see you out at the Carter on Friday night. I think it's doors open at 6. Gates practice scrimmage spring game is supposed to start at 7. I think is correct, but check TCU Twitter. I'm sure it's all out there somewhere. TCU football. Okay, so we could just hit the other two here quickly. So men's tennis, another 2 wins. The Baylor win was happening as we recorded last week, so we talked about that a little bit, but also traveled for a quick turnaround to Lubbock a couple days later to take on number 37 Texas Tech. Knocked them off 4-1. It was a pretty hotly contested contest. I think that was a one of the toughest challenges TCU has faced this season. Even though they come away with kind of on the scoreboard, it's a dominating win. The doubles point took everything they could give on that. Singles probably this match probably would have gone 4-3 if it hadn't just ended 4-1. So I think Tech is a good squad as well, and so that's a big win, and it sets up the massive contest against the Texas Longhorns, number 1 versus Somehow TCU keeps. It,
I
it's
don't know.
they were number
Yeah.
2 last week, and then won 2 ranked matches and dropped to number 3. In any case, number 1 Texas versus number 3 now TCU Horned Frogs in Austin. And I think it's Saturday night. It's going to be something. That is for the Big 12 regular season championship, and who will be the Big 12 number 1 seed for the Big 12 tournament. And very likely the winner of that should be the number 1 uh, team in the country, and probably number 1 overall seed for the NCAA tournament. So, um, very exciting matchup coming up this weekend. And a lot of these you're able to find streaming. So, if you go through Go Frogs or the TCU men's tennis Twitter, they usually post a link that has some of the live streaming. So I imagine the Longhorns, it may even be on Longhorn Network, actually, to thinking about it. But check it there, and find a way to watch this team or follow it as it's happening on Twitter or somewhere, because it's going to be exciting. And certainly if TCU is able to take down the Longhorns for the second time this season in a huge spot, it's another great thing to hold over our friends from Austin.
The only thing I could think of as to maybe why TCU was dropped from 2 to 3 is Jake Fearnley didn't play against Texas Tech, and I'm not sure if that was due to an injury, if there's anything really to worry about there. I'm not entirely sure, but maybe that had something to do with it. I really don't know. Baylor's a top 50 program. Tech is a top 40 program. Uh, how you beat both of those teams and only give up 1 point across the 2 matches and drop a rank doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But like you said, Frogs are going to have an opportunity. Just go out and beat Texas. Like it can't be that hard, right?
No big deal.
Go beat the number.
What, like it's
They
hard?
did it they did it earlier this year, so I think it's an opportunity for the Frogs to get some revenge. They learned from that first matchup, and we'll see how the Frogs deal with the Longhorns this time around.
All right. And also, our top ranked, we have to talk about every week, our top ranked TCU beach volleyball just continues to dominate all competitors, all competitions. Another sweep weekend through here at home in Fort Worth. Completed a third straight season without losing a match in Fort Worth. Incredible program that TCU has built here in beach volleyball. Next up, get a weekend with Cal Poly, UCLA, and Pepperdine. Um, Again, some of the best in the country. So uh, a nice trip to really show what TCU's got, headed in towards getting closer here to the postseason. Really trying to position themselves into getting the best seed possible. Really, you really want that number 1 seed. You get those top 2 seeds really in the beach volleyball tournament have a get put into a nice position to make a deep run. So looking to keep it rolling on the beach for the Sandy Frogs, and just another dominant program here in Fort Worth for the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, and four straight, uh, four more 5-0 wins, I should say, over the weekend. And I need to look at the schedule again because I want to say at least 2/3, if not 3/4 of the matches that this team has played this year have gone 5-0. So beating Florida Gulf Coast, Corpus Christi, UTEP, and Houston Christian over the weekend. And like you said, the season's almost over. I mean, you have 3 matches coming up this weekend, and then you'll have the CCSA championship tournament, and then right after that is the NCAA tournament. So it goes by fast. Some of these spring sports, it's kind of hard to believe that they're already some of them are already coming to a close here pretty soon. I believe women's golf just completed Big 12 match play, and you have tournaments rolling on for men's golf too. So um, a lot of good things happening for TCU athletics as usual, and really excited to see if this team can. I'm guessing that they're going to wind up being 31-0 after this weekend, barring something absolutely catastrophic. TCU's already handled Pepperdine this year. Not trying to put the Maloik on the Frogs, but for this team to potentially put a perfect season together that could culminate in a
that would
national
be really
championship
remarkable. Yeah.
would be really exciting. And um, we'll have some more non-revenue stuff to come up with Equestrian. I think Equestrian's got the national championship tournament coming up here shortly as well. So, um, like we've said before, you want to win. It doesn't matter what sport you play. You got to come to Fort Worth because that's where all the winning programs are. So, good stuff all around for the Frogs.
Okay, let's see. So now that you said that, UCLA is ranked number 3. So that's
Oh, really?
that's a tough
Yeah, that is
contest.
going to be a tough contest. I know Pepperdine is probably around the
Pepperdine is
20 range.
19.
Yeah,
Yeah, Pepperdine is number 19 in the latest rankings. UCLA is 3. TCU is the unanimous number 1 team. Um,
I get thrown off sometimes because and I know they do this with tennis too. When you look at the schedule, it doesn't display
right.
the
It doesn't
opposing
say
team's
number next
rank
to it.
until after they play. So it's like, come on, help us out here. We got to be informed about this stuff on the Frogs of War podcast, TCU Athletics. Post those rankings. Help us out.
You had to do an extra 20 seconds of research to find it. Um, the other thing,
I'm a
it's
busy man, Anthony. I'm a busy
I,
man.
I understand. The other thing that's not on our rundown here, but one to mention, that TCU women's basketball and new head coach
Mm.
have been hitting the recruiting trail like gangbusters. Really, already brought in one of the sport's most famous players in Sedona Prince, who got kind of worldwide notoriety, going viral on TikTok with posts during the 2021 women's NCAA tournament about how the food that they were being given and the weight room space that they were being given, and comparing it to the men's tournament. And so there's already been a lot of changes to the women's game just in the couple years since then. And she missed all of this past season transferring in from Oregon. She missed this entire past season at Oregon with an injury, and decided kind of last minute to pull out of the WNBA draft and instead transfer to TCU to join her old former assistant coach, who had been Coach Campbell had been the assistant there in Oregon. So that's big news. There's been another report of another Pac-12 player transferring in from Arizona, but I haven't seen that officially reported anywhere. So we haven't written about it yet or anything. But trying to think of her name now. I think it's Madison Connor, but transferring in from Arizona. So we'll see if that one comes through officially. But TCU women's basketball seems to be really throwing some weight around here. So I'm looking forward to. I'm hopeful that that program can get up to the level of being able to compete in the Big 12 and compete on the national stage, as women's basketball really took a big step forward this past season, and had a really exciting NCAA tournament. A lot of really interesting characters. So hopefully, Sedona Prince is healthy and able to play, and comes in and brings a big boost to the Horned Frogs.
Am I correct in reading that she's 6'7"?
6'7", yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think if you got a girl who's 6'7" and has low post skills, you're going to have a really good chance to win. And I think that's you tend to see this with coaches that come in to a new program, and when you can secure a notable player like that and sort of have that player be the cornerstone of your new team and the building block, it sends a message to other players in women's basketball that may be in the transfer portal right now that this team isn't messing around. This is a coach in Mark Campbell who's had a lot of success over the last couple of seasons at Sacramento State. Spent several years as a assistant at Oregon. He's brought in some assistant coaches as well that spent time at Oregon. He's got strong endorsements from big time women's basketball players, and it's sending a strong message when you can go out and get a player like this. And despite the fact that she missed last season with an injury, when she's healthy, she's a high level player that you can really lean on a game to game basis. So um, hoping to see women's basketball get back on track. It's really unfortunate how things panned out with Reagan Peebley. I don't really feel like it was her fault. You know, the program was really successful pre-COVID, and then the pandemic hits. Frogs
They
would
would
have
have
been,
definitely made the tournament
they
that
would have
season.
definitely made the tournament. I
That was the
believe they
best
had,
season. It was all building to that season. Yeah,
yep,
it's a tough scene.
and I believe they had over 20 wins, or they were at the 20 win
Hmm.
mark.
At 20 wins, yeah,
And
already.
then
Yeah,
it just never got back on track. And unfortunately for it's happened in college sports across different athletic programs. It's just a tough adjustment. And Reagan Peebley was a great coach that had a really successful tenure at TCU, spanning almost 10 years. So you hope that Coach Campbell can come in and bring in some good players right away to try and turn this thing around, and hoping for the best as they continue to build this roster.
and with that, we'll see you next week. We'll have lots to cover on TCU baseball and the what all happened in the spring game and what it all means and whatever other news that surprises us in the week ahead with TCU sports. So thanks for listening with us. Thanks for following us on Frogs of War. And go Frogs.
Go Frogs.